Tuesday. Your first broadcast is Friday. You don't have the roster yet. You don't know how to pronounce half the away team's names. You've emailed their coach 2 days ago and you still haven't heard back. And somewhere in the back of your head is a list of graphics that nobody's updated or touched. That's not a bad week. That's just most weeks. Welcome back to the Broadcast Ops Playbook. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Jordan.
And today we're chasing one question. Not how do you run a smooth broadcast, but how do you get ready for one? Starting from the second that game lands on your schedule, not the second you walk into the gym. We've talked about ready being the theme of this podcast that we're building, and this is the episode where we actually define it. Well, welcome back to the Broadcast Ops Playbook. Today, we're going to start with our broadcast word of the day, inspired by Jordan. He's like, we need to have something that we like, one word that we talk about every day. And so today's word of the episode is rundown. A rundown is the minute-by-minute plan for your broadcast. Every segment that you have planned, every camera cue that you need to do for pregame or during the game, every break, written out in order before anybody hits record. If it's not on the rundown, it probably shouldn't be happening on air, and it's probably happening by accident. So Jordan, where does a rundown actually show up in your room? Who builds it, and then when does it usually get built relative to game day?
Gotcha. Yeah, for us, rundown is really the blueprint of the entire production for us from start to finish. So it starts way early in the week, especially for football, because we only have one game a week. It starts on that Monday. Or really probably even before that when the students start working on it with the announcers and all that fun stuff. We build it into our production planning. It lays out everything that's going to happen during our broadcast, from the opening to the different segments, to each quarter, what we're doing at halftime, all the fun little extras we do throughout, commercial breaks, graphic replays, and then even what we're going to do during timeouts. So it is involved in pretty much every aspect of our broadcast. I wish I could say it's 100% accurate and we use it every time, but we're going to get to that point to where we're using it every single time and 100% accurate. But as you know, we're all working with students, and sometimes it takes some work and some time to work out some of those kinks and all that fun stuff. So that's what I'm doing. But a rundown, very, very useful. I've seen a bunch of different renditions of it in my production. We used to do it on a piece of paper. Then we went to a Word doc and sheets and all that fun stuff. But a bunch of different ways to do it. There's no one right way to do it, but I'm excited to see where we're going here in the future with broadcast ops and what it's capable of doing. So the producer is usually the one that's going to be in charge of this rundown that we're talking about. Everyone's going to be involved in putting everything inside of it, but they're going to be the one that kind of finalize it and oversee it and make sure that we haven't missed anything or something doesn't look right or in the wrong spot. But it takes everyone to make sure that it's all accurate. There's going to be things that students know about that I don't know about, like what the theme for the student section is for the night, that we can get a graphic prepped and ready for that. I may not know that. They may know that. I may know that there's some special ring ceremony or something like that going on that they don't know about. So it takes not only me involvement with it, but also the students to make sure we have everything laid out or as much information as we can. And there's going to be things that pop up during the game or right before the game that people don't tell you about. That's just the nature of the beast. I love our AD to death, but sometimes he doesn't always include me on all the emails that he should, that needs to know what's going to be happening during game. So we kind of get surprised by that, but just having an idea of what's going on is going to help your broadcast. And that rundown is a important part of that. Important thing is a rundown isn't something that is set in stone, just like I just kind of talked about. But if the game changes, the broadcast changes, the rundown gives us that plan. The producer has to be ready to adjust it on the fly. And that live rundown that we have in broadcast ups allows that to happen real easy. And so that's what I'm real excited about. We're a spreadsheet or writing it down on a piece of paper or print it out. You can't move it around. It's stuck in concrete. So a rundown, very useful thing. I'm really excited about using it in broadcast ups this year, and it should be used for everyone, big or small. Like it can be a huge rundown or a little bitty rundown, depending on what's going on. So it should be used every single time. It'll make things go a lot smoother and everyone will be prepared and ready to go.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned the rundown feature that we have in broadcast ops. And when you were talking about things happening on the fly, I was just like, that's why our live edit mode is phenomenal. And everyone's device will just update with that new information, and everyone will be all on the same plan and briefed appropriately for what they need to do. So basically, to sum up what Jordan just said, is the rundown tells everybody what's happening, when it's happening, and who's responsible for making it happen. That's what a rundown is in the simplest terms. And again, that's why we said um, it can be big, it can be small, it can include whatever you want to include on it. There is an industry standard that we'll show you, we'll talk about kind of trial by fire of what really works the best. But really, you can make it your own.
Yep, that's exactly right. And that's the difference between having a broadcast that is planned and just hoping everything works. And I will tell you, in my early days, it was just hoping everything works. And some days I still feel like that from time to time, but having it all planned out and an idea, most of the time it's going to work. You're still going to have those occasional issues with tech, but everything else that's in place should be good to go for you.
Well, and that's why when people talk about things being scripted, the game's not scripted, but the broadcast is about as close as you get to being scripted there. So, Jordan, we're just getting into the fall sports season now. Teams in Nebraska have been going for about a week here, but as we're recording this is game week for you guys, and you've told me it's a pretty big one for you guys to kind of prepare for. So, what does this week actually look like for you and your students in Nixa? And what is all on your plate before the first game?
Yeah, so like you said, this is probably our biggest home game of the year. It should have probably our best home game, just with the opponent that's coming in. And of course, it has to be the first week of school. So that's a fun one. So this week's going to look a little different than most weeks do, because there's just a lot that happens before any game nights throughout the week. This week, it's going to be me teaching the 60 kids. About 25 of them are brand new freshmen or just new students in general. So it'll be me trying to figure out, like, hey, this is what we're doing, by the way. Friday's your first game. Good luck. But most of the time, we're going to have at least kids that have an idea what's going on. But like I said, there's a lot that goes on. First thing that I do as a teacher is just making sure that I get the crew position set. I usually try to do that 5 days or so before, kind of lock those positions in. And there's always a kid or two that seems to need to be off or wants to get at it or something happens, But that's usually trying to figure out who's going to be my producer, who's going to be directing, running graphics, cameras, all that fun stuff. I give the students the option to sign up for the event. So every week I have a different crew, it seems like. And so I'm just trying to fit them into the best spots. That will make our broadcast the best that it can be. And some crews are really, really good. And there's other crews that I'm like, this one's going to be a little bit of a work in progress. And that's fine. That's the beauty of having students and me as the teacher, like teaching them, like eventually those top-notch kids are going to graduate and I'm going to have to be down at the basic bottom again anyway. So if I get a few in there ahead of time, even better. So once I get all that done, then it's actually preparing for the game. At the early in the year, that's getting headshots for our students or our athletes done, getting all those edited. Those takes quite a bit of time, and getting them uploaded into the system and tagged to the right person. And when the kids do it, them tagging the wrong person and getting it fixed to the right person, all that fun stuff. That first week happens. Importing rosters, trying to find the rosters. I'm lucky. Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm lucky at our district and our conference where they actually have them in one location for all of us shared across. So finding the rosters isn't too big a deal. Then I got to get around to scheduling the live stream on YouTube, updating the game information. That's what the students are doing, getting all the correct teams and location and times and keys to the game and who our key impact players are, all that fun stuff into the spreadsheet that feeds our system. And that, like I said, that spreadsheet feeds pretty much everything we do for graphics wise, live or lower thirds, full screen graphics, everything, including the colors of the teams, logos, mascots, all that fun stuff. They're also updating team records, and that can change, especially if football is a little different because it's once a week. They're not going to have another game where you get into basketball, softball, volleyball season. They may have played the night before, so you're having to go in and update those. records, reaching out to the opposing coach, finding storylines for the announcers, whether it's through local media outlets, those beat writers on the newspaper, whatever that might be, or just talking to the coach like I just talked about. We're just trying to get as much information documented and written down and then added to the rundown as possible. And that's been the one nice thing about broadcast ops. Everything's kind of there in one spot for us. Before, our announcers would make their own notes, and then the director would have their own notes, and sometimes they would match, sometimes they'd be completely different, or we wouldn't even know about something that the announcer was going to talk about because he had it in his own notes, and then he brought it up, and we're like, "Ooh, that would have been really nice to know about," so we could have a graphic ready for it. So this is going to hopefully consolidate that all into one thing, and make it so everyone can see everything that's going on. But that's the big early in the week, just trying to find as many storylines as possible. That's obviously easier as the season goes on because there's just more information about teams early on. You're talking a lot of what happened last year and what the possible outcomes are for this year, what people are predicting or thinking. And so it's a little easier as you get through the season. You have some stats to back some of that stuff. But the important thing is trying to get with that opposing coach and just getting information on them, getting with your own head coach, and finding the storylines that they learned about throughout the summer or things they didn't expect, or what they've liked so far with their season. And so then we get into the crew looking over that rundown. Like, now we got everything in there. Now, what's the order of that? What graphics do we need to get prepped and ready? Do we have every graphic ready to go for the spots that we have? Are there any fun, new, special moments that are going to happen throughout the game? I do know one. The very first week, we're going to recognize one of our retired teachers who was a former coach. The students have no idea about that, and I just happened to be in a meeting where they talked about it, or I would have known about it. And so just finding all those things that people don't always tell you about that they're going to happen throughout the game. And then let's see what else. It seems like there's a bunch. And I wish I had a list. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Like, I wish I had a whole list of things I need to check before the game or before game night that I knew was ready to go. And just making sure everyone knows what they're going to do when they get there on game night. Like, what needs to be done ahead of time before we go live. And that's where our SOPs, the standard operating procedures, that was our word of the episode last time. And so that's where those come into play. Like, when they show up, what do they need to be doing? We already have everything prepped of the prep, I guess I could call that. That's kind of a fun way to say it. Prepping the prep. That's all set. Now it's time to actually get feet on the ground, ready to roll and get this thing going live. So the goal is that we take all the things we learned doing through these broadcasts tournament and process that students can actually follow with those SOPs and even pregame prep. That's where I'm at. I worked on SOPs last year. Now, what do we need to do to get all the prep work for those SOPs done? So instead of me having to explain from scratch every time, here's how you set up the camera, here's where the battery goes, those systems are in place that we can now get those all done. And hopefully this year we can work on getting the prep of the prep done as well for those SOPs. And then I'm sure there's more there, but that's all I can think of off the top of my head that goes into a week, especially for football. Those are most of our biggest broadcasts. That's also what we put more prep into than anything because it only happens once a week, where some of those other sports, like I said, don't quite get the same prep attention because they may have 2 games in the same week or 3 games in the same week even. And so we don't have that time per se before the next game to do those large prep works. But football is one of those you can definitely do and get all those prep done. Talking to those coaches, talking to the media outlets that have information on it, all that can get you going. Is that enough for you, Nathan?
Yeah, that is what I would call a large laundry list of items that you just described. And that is the whole reason behind this episode, right? Because most programs don't have a real answer for how do you get ready. And even just hearing from you, Jordan, now it sounds like that is an incomplete list. Not a super incomplete list, but there are still items out there that you'll probably think of when we get done recording, and then you'll have to go and work on or add it to a sticky note or whatever, right?
Yep,
But a lot of
exactly.
programs,
And there's things like that the students do without me even knowing, like contacting the coaches. I am not involved with that at all. Like that is up to the student to email out. Like if they need an email address or something, I can typically find it for them. But some of those things, like that is all on them. If they don't reach out to the coach, like one, I'm going to know about it because when they're starting to talk, they're not going to have anything to say about the other team. But it's nothing that I like check off my list. That's something the students are doing on their own thing. So a lot of those things, like it's up to the students. If they're not done, I'll notice them at the end, but there's nothing I can do about it at that point, or nothing I want to do about it. Like it's their show. And so I want them to be responsible and have that kind of responsibility and just the want to make it look good and have that drive to do the little things that make it look good.
Yeah, it's like a coach saying, "Hey, you need to watch film." They'll have a film study, sure, but they can't film study every day. They got to go out to practice. But it's on this individual athlete to watch some film in the extra time that they have to be prepped. The same way it is for your students in a broadcast. It's up to them to use the available class time. But if you're also running more of a club, they might have to commit some hours in the evening, or maybe they have a study hall time or a free period or something like that where they can send a message like that, or they can start doing some more prep work on it. And if you're a teacher listening that you don't even know where to begin with this, it feels daunting to hear that laundry list. I mean, I was even starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed, Jordan, as you were kind of going through those things, and I don't have to do any of those for you. Like, I was sitting here like, oh, that is a lot. And it reminds me of how much I actually do and how I probably need to build some better, SOPs, but also building the rundown and those checklists, because I do it. I just, I'm used to operating solo, and we'll get into that here
I'll
a
also
little
add,
bit.
like, as the teacher, you're responsible for it, yes, but so a lot of the responsibility, especially like for me, I built the rundown for them every single time. And I've now got away from that, but I also had to give them an example to start with to show them what we were looking for. Nowadays, they can kind of run with it. And once you get the first one or two kind of built and you like them, it's just tweaking from that point on. Like a football game, there's not going to be any major change. Like you're not going to change the fourth quarter to the first quarter, because that's just not how it works. A football game is going to start the first quarter and end in the last quarter. You may change what order you're doing things inside of those, but those are little tweaks, especially in broadcast ops. It's just drag and drop to the new spot now. And so once you get an idea set, like you can even use it, even if it's you as the teacher that made it originally, it's still up to the students to finalize that thing and make it all happen. And get everything where you want it. And then you as the teacher can look it over, give them the thumbs up, or be like, you guys can try this, but we might want to work on it for next week type of thing. So just hold their hand, but don't do it for them. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think we're going to get more into that here in this next part here. Um, we showed the problem, right? This is when you have a large list like that. This is why you need to have documentation of what happens while preparing for a game. Everyone loves to talk about game day roles. They like to talk about who's running camera, who's on audio, who's running the graphics. That's the fun stuff that matters. And it does really matter, and it's what they love to talk about. But it also assumes um, you already showed up ready, right? Running camera doesn't just mean showing up 10 minutes before the game, and the camera's already sitting there for you. Now, most programs, that is the way it is, right? And that's what we're trying to develop a little bit more operational things around that to make the program easier, to have students take on more of that responsibility so that they actually probably should be the ones setting up their camera, and that's their role, and we truly make it a role, right? But again, the thing is, nobody writes down the plan for the week before the week begins, right? And so then ready, right? And I put that in now quotation marks, ready ends up meaning whatever you remembered to do, whenever you remember to do it, not what you should be doing. And that's not a system, that's a to-do list that lives in your head. And we're trying to get away from it. And so Jordan, I want to kind of let's take it back, because you've been doing this for a while. Um, on some of your early broadcasts, maybe the first season or a new crew's first game. What did getting ready actually look like before you had a process for it?
Yeah, so I scare myself thinking back on that for sure. Thinking back to some of our early broadcasts, getting ready was a lot more reactive, is what I would say, than it is now. It was, oh yeah, that's right, we need to do this. Oh, did anybody set this camera up? And they'd all look at me like deer in headlights. Nope. Yep, I guess we should probably do that. So I would be sitting down before the game thinking, okay, what do we need to do for this one? That's what I was originally starting with. And it was all right up here in my head and not written down. And that's a huge fall on my start. And I'm like, I wish I would have had something in documentation or at least written down that I could go through and checklist. And I tried to create a few at the beginning, but none of them, they were never good enough. And so we still just end up usually scrapping them is what ended up happening. So I would ask myself, do we have the rosters? Do we have player headshots? Are the graphics ready? Do we get that information from the other teams? And there's still times like that I won't look on the spreadsheet to know if we have the records put in, and I just depend on the students. Do we have the roster or the record in, or is that the record from last week? And so every once in a while, we'll get called out and be like, we're actually a week behind, for I need to fix that. So then I'll have to get on there and do that. Do we schedule a stream? That's always my biggest worry and fear, and trying to get that out ahead of time so that people know and can access it ahead of time, and we can start blasting stuff out. What storylines do the announcers have? If not, is it just going to be dead air? Are they just going to be sitting there saying nothing? Or when it's time to go break, or are they just going to, or a timeout even, can they talk through that? Or are they just going to expect us to get out of there and do something for them so they have a time to think about? Those happen quite often. And those are slowly developing their way out of our broadcast. Students have more information than what they're needing to talk about. And so they always have something they can fill in a lot of the times. And so filling in those gaps or dead spaces are a little easier. Now, you still get a rookie announcer on there every once in a while, or someone who's been there. They're like, yeah, we've prepped and prepped and prepped. We have all these notes, and they'll ramble through them. And then it's like, oh, we still have 4 minutes left. And I guess that'll be it. We'll see you for starting lineups type of thing. And that's always fun. And they learn their lesson, always over prep and get more in there than what you think you're going to need. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of things that happen and that you have to think through. And I trying to think back when I was younger and going through these processes, it was all here. And did I get everything done that needed to get done? And so now it's pushing it. Did the students get everything done that need to get done? And that's a little more worrisome as a teacher because you don't have that control over it anymore. But it also gives the students more. They're more buy into your program when they have something to do. And it just gives you a lot less worry and stress because you're not having to try to fulfill all of those things for them to make it a good broadcast for them. It's up to them that does it. So yeah, a lot of that information just in my head. And I had to try to figure out what times I could get stuff done when it needed to get done. And so in the end, you as the teacher are still the one responsible for making sure the broadcast happens. Like someone still needs a broadcast live stream on there. Now, does it need to be 8 cameras with extra graphics and replay? No, it does not. That's not in your responsibility. Have I made that my responsibility? Yes. But really the ultimate goal is, can you get a game out there? And if it needs to be bare bones, it needs to be bare bones. So yeah, it's really easy just you doing the things yourself. It's more time consuming, more work, it will burn you out. And I think Nathan could probably tell you a few stories on teachers that are burnt out from trying to do these entire processes themselves to make sure that their students are successful. Your students can still be successful without you having to do it all. That's the big thing. And as a teacher, more than likely your just personality is like, I want to provide for the students. I want to make sure they're set up to be successful. And so you're going to try to do some of those things yourself. And I was notorious starting forward. And I would still argue, like, I'm still notorious. Like, I'm still doing some things that the students really need to be doing themselves. And I think you guys doing that post last year was a great example of that. What are some things that I could be pushing off to the students? And I don't remember what my percentage was, but it was higher than I wanted it to be. And so just things like that, finding ways to get the kids responsible and involved. The leadership team for me has helped a lot with that because now there's a little more of a higher authority besides just me, above just a normal everyday student. So, you know how to do it. You can do it faster, like all of those things. It might look better when you do it too. Like I get all of those things. When a student makes a graphic, you're like, oh, yeah, let's put that one up there. Let's find a way to tweak that a little bit before we put it up. Or they say, hey, I need this graphic made. Boom, done. But they went flying through instead of taking the extra time and effort to make it happen. So that's a little coaching that goes involved there. And a lot of times, if you put that first one up that doesn't look very good, people will talk about it and they'll be like, oh, you're there. That's right. That's not good enough for what we're doing. And then just holding your broadcast program to a high standard, like set a goal, set a standard. I've been lucky with my announcers. I've talked about this before. I've got really, really good announcers that started from the beginning of my program. And so we've just set that as the standard. Like, this is what you're having to meet if you want to be an announcer here at Nixa. And so if anybody gets on, they know that's the expectation and they know they have to put the work and effort in. Sorry about my school bell there. We can ignore that. But yeah, just holding yourself to a standard. I'm a big firm believer that if you hold students to a higher standard, a lot of times they will meet that. Will they meet it every single time? No. Or will they slack off from time to time? Yes. But overall, as a group, they're going to meet you at that standard. And so you can continue to push that envelope. So yeah, the goal really is for the students to run the program. It is not for me to do everything that I can do. It's fun for me to do all of those things and try things out, yes, but in the end, it's for them to learn, to get better. We are not an ESPN as much as we want to think we are. Our goal is to get the broadcast out, whether it's one camera or not, so that people can view it and watch it. And then if we can add an educational component to that and add some extra fun things to it, even better. And so as a teacher, that's the one thing you need to remember. Like, it is the students needing to learn, not what you can put out there and make you look like you're the bright shining star. And I hate it at football games. Our PA announcer always says, Mr. Burns, Nixa Live students. No, Mr. Burns does not need to be involved in this. I do not need any of the limelight. I can go hide in the truck and be just as happy and not ever see myself or hear myself being talked about and let the kids have all the glory for it. So that's the big one. Some of the things you need your students to take ownership of aren't necessarily fun jobs either. And so that's where I ran into issues in the past. Like, is it a lot of fun to go put rosters in? No, it's not. Is it fun to make graphics? Sometimes, but it's not fun when it's a graphic that you're told you have to make and not a fun one that you can just make yourself. So that's just part of it. Once they see how that individual part, even though it doesn't seem real important or necessary, fits into the broadcast, it makes it easier and they can see their hard work on broadcast. That's all important part to do. Students want to run the camera, they want to direct, they want to do replay, they want to do all those fun things. And so they're not necessarily thinking about who is updating the spreadsheet. They're thinking of, it's game day, I'm on camera, let's go. And so we have to try to reverse that a little bit, and think about, what do we need to do so that that camera operator is ready to go? And you as the camera operator, who are the star players you need to be looking at? One of my very first broadcasts, this is my favorite. I put a person on wide shot and I said, all right, all you have to do is follow the quarterback. And their response to me was, what's a quarterback? Oh, great. So that's even a little research. That's the guy that's going to stand behind the line, maybe one of the most important parts on the field. You might want to figure out who that is. They're going to have the ball a lot of the time. And so that was just a fun one. And that's part of it. Like, they were not an athlete. They never maybe watched football, maybe. But most people know what the quarterback is. They had no idea. And here they are running a broadcast camera for me. So yeah, they're not thinking, what do I need to do to prepare myself? Now, the big time when you get on ESPN, you'll see the camera operators. They've got pictures of the players, the head players or the important players, or maybe the coaches that they need to hit. They have the things documented ahead of time. Like, they know those are the processes that we want to try to get in place. Maybe not to that extreme of a level, but at least knowing what they're going to need to shoot, what they need to get prepped. Those are all things. It's not the fun parts of it necessarily, but it's the parts that will make it more fun because it's a more successful broadcast and all those things front in there. And that's also where your SOPs, standard operating procedures, really get into place. Like if you have it set in stone, they're going to meet that expectation like I talked about. And now they're running that SOP and everything is going a lot more smooth for you. So we're not just writing procedures on how to run the broadcast. We're trying to document everything that has to happen before so that the responsibility can eventually move from the teacher to the student. So that's what I've really focused my attention on this last year is, yes, I can do that, but if I can make a student do it, what can I do to make that successful for a student and get everything documented? Like then this, I can hand it to the student and say, here's what needs to happen. And they're like, okay, we can make this happen. Everyone does better with a checklist instead of me saying, all right, this needs to be done pregame. And then they don't really know what to do pregame. So just making sure everything's documented. Experience says, I know what needs to be done. A system says anybody on the team can know what needs to be done. And that's where we want to be as a teacher and as a broadcaster. We want to know what needs to be done and who can, or everyone knows how to get whatever they need to get done. Because as a teacher, they're going to leave. This isn't something that's our, we're going to have full-time employees that they're here every year for the next 20 years. We're going to get them a few times a night for 4 years if we're lucky, maybe even just 2 years, and then they're going to go move on, and we're going to have a brand new newbie who doesn't know who the quarterback is, and we're going to have to figure that out for them. So, yeah, that's the big one there. Just getting it documented so everyone can work on it, and that's where those SOPs come in real handy.
Yeah, that is a really, I'd use the word powerful take. And just a side note, it's so fun to have the bell ringing in the background. Like those of you listening and not watching, Jordan has his background. It's a nice graphic of Nixa live, but like if he took that away, you would see his classroom. And so I've gotten to see that on Zoom calls before. But for even more evidence, Jordan's in a classroom right now. Like he's a teacher among you. So we didn't set this up. I wouldn't just go out and buy a bell system just to integrate in the background of Jordan's stream. That's not the kind of budget we're rolling on here with this podcast. But I think what Jordan said there, kind of in the middle of that segment, was it really hits on what a lot of broadcast teachers are feeling. The live stream or broadcast that you do as a school is such a public part. It's such a visible part of what your school produces. And you know that there is pressure, whether it's from admin, community members, sponsorships. I mean, as you get sponsors, they have a stake in making sure that the product looks quality, that it looks good. And so you know that there's pressure to deliver the best product you can. While at the same time, you're balancing on this other hand, giving kids an opportunity, right, to pursue learning about broadcasting and to chase a career path. And like for me, when I was in high school, my teacher allowed me to do that. And of course, I'm big on, leaving things better than you found them. Those are things that my parents as teachers instilled in me at the school and the other teachers as well as I was growing up. And I thought of this broadcast program as this is the thing that I have been given responsibility over. And it's my job to do the best that I can, which turns out to be pretty good because I put the time and the effort into it to become good at it. And I knew that this is a thing that people are watching, whether it's people from the school or grandparents or people from the opposing school. And it's a direct reflection on what our school stands for. And so I walked up to the mic and prepped everything with that thought in mind. Like this, I'm doing this for my school. The same way when you put on that uniform, you put on that jersey for Friday night, it doesn't say, like in high school, at least not yet, it doesn't say your last name on it. It doesn't say your name on it. It says the school that you represent, right? And so that's what we're doing as a broadcast program. That's why I love, Nixa Live, right? It's not Jordan's streaming crew. It's not whoever the leader of the leadership team happens to be, but it is the live stream crew for Nixa. And that's the identity they run under. And one of the other things that Jordan mentioned, just to keep kind of summarizing what we were talking about, is knowing that you as the teacher can do it easier most of the time or quicker, and having to hand that over to the students. So for us at Striv Education, we do the Nebraska State Championships streaming. We do volleyball, basketball, soccer, and track and field. We even do the semifinal round of football playoffs. And I know that sometimes I'm there as the crew lead, and we're bringing in students from all across the state. And they work in programs that we work with. So I know a lot of the students, but I also know that the skill range varies. And so one of the important things that we do is we provide training. And that might end up being the next episode. I might have just previewed or leaked what we're going to talk about next week. But they're all running the same equipment. And sometimes I have to remember, like, okay, we need to set up the scoreboard. And I've done that probably, not an exaggeration, over 1,000 times. I could do it in 1 minute and not 4. Having to walk a student through and say, here's how you do it, or them trying to remember or referring back to a list. But I have to remind myself that the reason that I got into this is not for me to do broadcasting, even though I love it. Like, I love that part. But I got into this to help other students learn about broadcasting. And you can't have them learn by just doing it for them. You can't just give them the handout. I want them to do it and do the process, because then they're going to remember it and they're going to get faster and faster each time that they do it. And what I really remember is that when I started out as a student at the state events, there was someone who sat behind me. Whoever was in my position at that time was the same person sitting behind me, and they were watching me painstakingly try to do something the long way or the hard way. So it's just how the world works, right? It is the rule of passing down knowledge, and as teachers we understand that, right? Math teachers, you watch a kid do an equation the long way or the difficult way. English teachers, you I don't know, watch a kid put a comma in the wrong place. That's why I have Grammarly in the professional world. Grammarly puts my commas in the right place, but clearly I did not pay too much attention to John Baylor when he said hammer the grammar. Nah, not for me. I said I'm just going to use this tool. But yeah, to digress. Teaching students skills requires you to know that you can probably do it better and do it faster, but letting them try it anyway, because they're going to learn from it. So that's kind of wrapping up that section. So the assumption that trips most programs up, kind of getting back to checklist SOPs, is that if you have your game day SOP locked, right? Everyone knows the role of the main camera operator during the game. That the preparation will just take care of itself. And it won't, right? Game day SOPs will tell you what to do once you're in the gym. But you don't spend all week in the gym. You should really only spend, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours at the max, with, a couple hours ahead of time for prep and an hour after for tearing down. But the game day SOPs don't tell you what has to happen before you get there, right? So, Jordan, just going back to you again, because you've got great examples. And I think I said this last episode, but it's important to hear these things, even if we consider them failures. I don't like that word. I like learning opportunities. I'm not opposed to failing. I know I failed a lot. Like, believe me, I've failed a lot of times. But I also try to learn something from it every time to apply it and to be better. And so the actual question I want to ask you, was there a season or a specific broadcast where you learned the hard way when prep got skipped or rushed and you could really see it on air?
Yeah, absolutely. Football is probably the easiest example there for sure. Mainly because it's the easiest to prep for and the most difficult to prep for, because of the amount of prep it takes to get that done, like I just talked about earlier. But you have the week basically before the game happens, or basketball, you might have the night before and there's a game, and now you're re-prepping again and getting everything ready to roll. But for me, 2 years ago, we had a really, really strong announcing crew. Had a really, really strong pregame show, like 3 segments. They were getting to the point where they asked our head coach for huddle access even, and they were getting on huddle and using the drawing tools on huddle, and they were drawing out the plays and like drawing, showing what, I don't know all the football terminology, so I'm not really much help here, but they were showing the different layouts and how they're designed and what worked well and what didn't. And they would even go in and see some of the other teams. They wouldn't show their other team stuff, but they would talk through it, and say, here's what they look like. Here's what they're going to do. If they come out in this formation, they might do this. And it was so incredible. It was awesome. I'm like, I would love to have this every single time. And that was the plan. Like we had it kind of set. Here's how we set it up. Here's how we do it. And then the next year came about. That person graduated. He's actually going to be my assistant this year. So I'm excited to have him come back. But the other announcer that was with him, who did all the steps that he did, like he knew the process. He had a new announcer come back with him the next year, and we had none of that. We were lucky some weeks to even have a recorded pregame show. We weren't doing the huddle thing. We weren't drawing on the screen. We didn't have any of that. And like I said, there was a lot of times if we had any technical difficulties at all, they were waiting to do even a live shot of the pregame show because they didn't have anything pre-recorded. And if there was anything that went wrong, well, we didn't even have a pregame show, or it was just them in the booth doing a little talk back and forth 5 minutes before the game. And so that was pretty disappointing last year to go from just that high caliber pregame show. They still did their pregame picks last year, so that was a segment that they got done, and they actually made it better where they had 4 people picking instead of just them 2. So it wasn't that it was all lost, but that really deep dive into the team and getting to see them draw on the screen and talk about their thoughts for the upcoming week and what the last week looked like. Like those were all really good segments that we missed out on last year. And so that's part of it. Like when you have students go from one to another, like they're all going to have their specialty and things that they really like to do. And that's what he dove into. He went head over heels into it, and had both of them on board. The other student was ready to go the fall or last year to do it. But then he was not very good at communicating. And so the other announcer would not be there when they needed to record, or just the timing didn't work out, or they're like, oh, we'll do it tomorrow after school. And then tomorrow after school, they'd come in that weren't ready and didn't have a chance to record it. Or the camera was outside. And so they're like, well, we'll just forget about it. We won't do it. So the prep work on that stuff was not there. And so they didn't get to do all those little fun little extras. And it hurt them. There's no doubt about it. So when they got into the game, they didn't have all that prep work that they had the year before. And the formations, they're like, yeah, here at pregame, we talked about this exact formation and it just happened. You can see it on replay unfold. Exactly how. And here's where the defense, we thought they would do this and they didn't. They did this instead. And that's why they stopped us that time, type of stuff. Like it was very detailed, very good. And we didn't have it last year. And it was a bummer for sure. And I definitely had comments from our community like, announcing was not quite where it was last year. I'm like, yep, that's part of it. That's we're going to have ebbs and flows. But this year it's been fun to see it's the same 2 that we had last year. And they've been working this summer together on communication and trying to get stuff ready to roll. I got an email yesterday, actually, to a visiting coach. They've already emailed them and they even included me for maybe the first time ever. So I actually know what questions they asked. And I'm not going to hype into it, but at least I know what they asked and if they get information back or not. And so, yeah, it's been neat to see them kind of take a new step in the right direction, realize that we need to step it up. We didn't meet our expectation that we did last year, and it got better as the year went on. But at the same time, like they've recognized, like we want to do more and can do more and should have done more. And so that's part of it. I feel like that's a really good example that where we started, where we've been, and now where we've moved back to, I guess. And so we'll see if we can make that happen. When the prep work is there, everything just moves more smoothly. There's no doubt about it. When there are issues, people can cover those issues a lot easier when things are already in place and done. A graphic that maybe isn't in the right spot can be found and put on there instead of made on the spot and put up late. All those different things can happen. So yeah, when you don't prepare, you scramble. That's the biggest thing. And I feel like earlier in the years, we did a lot of scrambling. And we're now getting to the point where we still scramble. There's no doubt about it. But those scrambles are few further and further between. We have those systems in place now, or getting at least working on getting those systems in place because they're not perfect. Even our SOPs, like we've got a majority of them done, but that doesn't mean that when we get out there on Friday, that everything's going to be able to be checked off the list and make sense to everyone. So those I feel like will always be a work in progress. Adding new equipment will be in there too. So yeah, it's less of a scramble. The announcers are trying to find their notes, graphics getting last second made. Maybe graphics have an error because they did them last second, or don't get shown at all, or they get shown after the fact. None of those things make sense. The audience knows that kind or notices that kind of stuff. And in those best broadcasts, they look instant. That's why ESPN and all those guys, like when they ask for something from the announcers, it's put up right away, or they can show a clip of maybe they're going to talk about the quarterback, and that camera, it's like, wow, they already had a camera there ready to go. Whereas a high school kid, we're like listening to what the announcer said. Oh, quarterback. We're talking about the quarterback. Director goes, all right, let's find the quarterback. And then 20 seconds later, we have the quarterback, even though now they're talking about the running back because that's part of it. In the ESPN world, they have those down to nice cued moments. Everyone knows it's coming up. They can talk about it ahead of time. They can send information back and forth. And so it looks instant. And it's because it is instant. They have it ready to roll, where if you're scrambling around, it's definitely not instant or not done at all. And so that's when the prep work, when you get all that done, everything in one place, everybody knows what's coming up next. Crew can follow the rundown. That's what makes it look a lot smoother, a lot cleaner, and just makes things run so much more smoothly. You're not feel like you're having to go put out 100 fires as the teacher because something didn't get done or a graphic is done but not where it needs to be to put up all that fun stuff. So for me, the biggest lesson is prep work just doesn't make the broadcast better. It makes your crew, gives your crew the ability to react when things don't go according to plan. And this is sports. Like timeouts are going to happen when you least expect them. And yeah, we put them in the first quarter, but it doesn't mean they're going to happen in the first quarter. And sometimes it might not be a game where your coach is real happy, and it may all happen in the first quarter. You never know. And then you're scrambling around like, oh, I was not ready for that. One of our um, crowd games is the first 30-second timeout. And sometimes that might happen in the second quarter. There's other times you have a rough first 2 minutes, and that coach is calling a 30-second timeout right off the bat, and no one is ready for that because you're all thinking, yeah, okay, we're going to have some time to get into the game. We're just getting our feet wet. Everyone's going on. And nope, that coach is mad. Timeout. Here we go. Now it's crowd game. Is everyone even close to ready for it? Have we even talked about what the crowd game even is? And so having those all documented, then you can go to it. Everyone knows, hey, coming up is our smile cam. It's our very first 30-second timeout. We can say that right as the first quarter kicks off. And then when that time happens, we're ready to go. We're not scrambling around like, where's my button? Where's my button? Where's my button? And so that's where that rundown, the plan, prep work, all that goes into play, and we're ready to go then. And so that's been the biggest difference, I feel like, for me towards the end of the season for basketball, for sure. Like we knew coming in 30-second, that first time out, it might be in the first quarter, it might be third quarter. You never know because they may be so mad they want a full timeout that very first one. And so we talked when that first tip off happens, we're going to talk, hey, the first 30-second timeout is going to be smile cam. Everyone knows smile cam is going to be our graphics on the right side of the screen. The people are going to be on the left side of the screen. Our director can communicate that out ahead of time. It's in the rundown. It says where they need to be. And so even if they didn't listen to the director, they can get on there and see what's going to happen. So that's helped a ton. And so I hope to only make it better and better now with our broadcast ops rundown. So.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely a lot of great examples there to take away. So,
Good and
all
bad,
right,
unfortunately. I wish I had only good, but good and bad.
that's how it happens. So, let's actually build. And we're gonna do this quickly because we are. I feel like we're in like Wheel of Fortune, and the final spin bell has been ringing in my head. Like we're gonna try to wrap this up here. So we're gonna give you 5 steps that we would add first, and we're gonna try to do it in 5 minutes, Jordan. Okay.
Okay.
I,
One
I,
minute.
I literally my stopwatch is open on my phone, so I'm gonna time us. So just be ready. We're gonna go back and forth. We're gonna make this work. So let's build the actual prep sequence. 5 steps, 5 minutes starts now. Okay. So step number one, from what I've heard, is we're gonna lock the roster and we're gonna start chasing pronunciations of names immediately. Not necessarily on game day, but the second you can get your hands on the roster, that's what you're gonna do.
Yep, absolutely. Get the roster, get that information in, let the announcer see it, look it over, find those problem names that they know they're going to struggle with. And then don't wait until pregame warmups to go figure out what those are. Like the minute you get there and there's a coach there or a player or anybody, get with them, see if you can get those pronunciations out. Obviously, if you get there right at the beginning, try to talk to that head coach, build that relationship, see if there's any game day information that you may have missed when in the previous one. But yeah, get there, get those names addressed. If you don't know the name, don't guess. Go talk to one of the teammates. Sometimes the players are easier to talk to than coach. They're a little less intimidating. But the coach is obviously the one that will give you more information than anything. But and then if worst case scenario, don't guess. Listen to what the PA announcers say if you're still struggling or don't know what it is exactly. Like there's places that can help you get those names. Just don't guess and just be a little quiet to start with until the time comes you know what it's correct from the PA announcer. Is that under a minute?
Uh, Couple seconds over, so we'll keep this continuing quick. A
Oh,
scorebook person is also a good person to know. They usually travel with the team, and so they're usually a parent or somebody who knows all of the students.
yep.
That was my go-to as an announcer. Um, Reaching out to a coach if you got questions. How do you frame those questions? Just real quick.
So we talk a lot about this. I actually do a whole unit intro to business with it with open-ended, open question versus closed questions. And so I'll have to do this real quick on this one, but open questions going to give the coach a yes, no answer. They're going to get a real easy opt out. And most of the time, the coaches, if you give them that option or just a general person or anybody, they're going to say yes or no. They're not going to give you a bunch of details. So we talk about those open and closed questions, trying to get more information out of them, make them say more than just yes or no. What kind of questions can you do that? And as a teacher, I have the students build this in class. Like they have, okay, what are some questions we can ask a head coach? We get a whole list combined out, and then those emails that we send out to those coaches or the phone calls that we have, they students now have a list that they can kind of choose from. The big one on there when you're asking questions in any sort of interview, whether it's live on air or not, is making sure you can make those as positive as you can. Coaches will love to turn those and make them a negative, but making them positive or finding a positive in some sort of solution, even if things are not going the way you want them to, is a huge part of that interview and a huge responsibility for the person interviewing. It's my other opinion on that.
Perfect. This one, step three, build your graphics list ahead of time. I think this one could be very quick and we'll probably separate it out into its own episode. But decide what needs to exist before kickoff happens, not an hour before, and you're like, ooh, a graphic here would be great.
Yeah, so just trying to get everything listed out. That's what the rundown's for. Going through the rundown before you get to game day, seeing, hey, here's a highlighted. Say, here's an area that we need a graphic for. Here's another one. Here's another one. A lot of times you can use those graphics every single game. So we have one for head coaches, we have one for band, choir, cheer, all of those types of things. Anything that may happen multiple times throughout the broadcast or even throughout the year. Student section's another one that we have on there that we can throw up. It's real instance at the top of the list. And then those game by game ones are further down the list where you can still find them, but you're not, and they're editable down at the bottom. The ones at the top, they're locked in solid. I even have it in my spreadsheet where they're locked in where you can't edit them.
Perfect. 1 minute to go. Two more things. Graphics get you the visuals. How do you do storylines? So step four is like have your announcers develop storylines. So like 30 seconds. How do you develop a storyline?
This kind of goes back to the open and closed questions. When you're asking them questions, like don't just get single word answers like yes, no, team looks good. That doesn't help you. Like that's not how you build a storyline. make it to where they're actually giving you information, and there's ways to do that. I have students tell me all the time they want to see what happens during the game before they make an interview question, and they're going to make them up on the spot. And I'm like, yeah, go for it. That's a great idea, because then they have no clue. But having that big list, you can always pivot. Like if something big happens in a game, you can always go in down there and ask that question at that moment and get that big reaction that you're wanting. But having something in place ahead of time when the big thing doesn't happen and you're still interviewing them, that's the important part. And just trying to, just make sure to ask good questions, not just yes, no answers.
We've hit 5 minutes and 15 seconds. That's all right. Step 5. We're so close, Jordan. We were on a roll there. I had some belief at the first part. It's okay. Step 5 then is run a day before check, right? Do one pass through everything. Confirm that the roster has been received. Confirm that your announcers made contact with the coach. Graphics are built. The questions are written. The storyline's written out. If something is missing and you've got a football game on Friday, it's better to find out Thursday night than Friday at like 6:30 for a 7 p.m. kick. And you're like, can't do a whole lot about that right now because everything else is going on.
Yep.
So
This
go ahead.
this is definitely work in progress for me. Those things do pop up still, and I don't have the prep of the prep list checklist like we talked about. The SOPs are helping, and having an SOP for prep, I think, is going to be my next step, to be honest. I've tried doing a thing called Sport Ambassador, where I have had a couple students who are in charge of sport, and they're the ones responsible for making sure everything is ready to go pregame for the prep of that sport. Now, has it gone successfully? Not necessarily. Some students are better than others. Some sports are better than others. So that's, like I said, that's kind of one of my goals for the year is try to work on that sports ambassador program. I probably need to come up with a better name for it, to be honest, and that might be part of my problem. But just making sure the students, like for football, I got 2 people, they're in charge of that. The director is also in charge of that. But those 2 people are going to oversee before the director gets their hands on it. And that will hopefully fill those gaps and take some responsibility off me as the teacher. I'll still have to look through it and make sure everything's ready to roll, but hopefully some of those gaps, like we talked about, will be filled because they can catch them before I have to catch them.
Love it. So here's the fun part about all of the stuff we just spent the last hour talking about. That is just one version of ready, right? We gave you 5 steps. Lock the roster in, pronunciations, reach out to the coach, graphics, prep your interview questions the day before check. But your list might be different. And that's what's amazing, right? So we've developed a pregame prep checklist that you and your students can use during the week to ensure everything has been taken care of and that you are ready for game day. To get your copy of the pregame prep checklist, go to strive.education/pregame-prep. Fill out the form and you'll get an email with the download of your pregame prep checklist. And I'll say this, I was kind of alluding to it before I told you where to go to find it. Not every program can map their pregame checklist to the list that we provided. Some people, it's just really hard to reach out to the away coaches, and that's not something that admin wants you to do or your athletic director doesn't want you doing that. We get that. There are some things, some schools are running programs that don't have sponsorships, so you don't have to add those to, the list to make sure they get mentioned. I get it. So this pregame checklist is yours to have your unique perspective put into it. So this is the math teacher father that I have. My dad's a math teacher. This is a math thing. So add, subtract, multiply, or divide, whatever works for your program. Take this list, make your own. I don't care. We're giving it away for free, right? These are just the 5 basic steps. And obviously, as you heard the laundry list with Jordan, it's a lot longer, right? The 5 steps is a good starting spot. I like things in multiples of 5, multiples of 3, anything like that. Those are usually good places to start because it's manageable and not overwhelming. So, and if this list felt familiar to you and you've got your own version of it, we'd love to hear about it, right? That you can share it in the Future Ready Educators community, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But we would love to know what you do. And so comment, whatever you want to do to let us know what you do. So, and then the biggest thing will be like, okay, we have all this now. How do we train the crew to run this list without you as the teacher standing over their shoulder? And like I alluded to earlier, I think that might be where we go next, talking about a little bit of the equipment specific training or things that we do as leaders of broadcast programs, as teachers, to make sure that before the first event of the year, our students have enough knowledge of what they're going to do. So if this is your first time with us, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you're a teacher and you feel like you're on an island, we've created a community just for you. Future Ready Educators is our community of digital media and broadcasting teachers. Go to futurereadyeducators.com to join. It's completely free, and teachers are sharing tips and tricks that save them time. Now, the Broadcast Ops Playbook is a product of Striv Education. To learn more about Striv Education and how you can work with us, go to striv.education. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
See you guys.